Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Anita Verghese. I work at Keystone Foundation. We're based in the Nilgiri Biosphere in Tamil Nadu. We work on eco-development issues with indigenous people of mountain areas. That's our sort of focus area. I'm also one of the members of the steering committee of the Ecological Restoration Alliance. And we are here as part of that with my colleagues Mandeep and Sushila. So here in the Ecological Restoration Alliance, we've been very keen to reach out to as many people as possible that we can with the ideas of building a movement for ecological restoration that is very inclusive, that has space for all kinds of conversations, for diversity of conversations, and to include as many ways of reaching this goal of ecological restoration. So, with that in mind, a couple of maybe almost a year ago, we decided to host one particular stream of work, which is the Indigenous People and Local Communities Desk. And this particular desk is also part of several other desks that we have in the Ecological Restoration Alliance, some who are looking at the different aspects of ecological restoration in terms of seeds, in terms of ecoregions, in terms of advocacy. So here, particularly the Indigenous People and Local Communities Desk has been started with the intention of just scanning the length and breadth of our country to see initiatives that have been taken up by local communities towards restoration. And how could we look at the existing models, identify the gaps, address those gaps in terms of training needs and capacity building that is needed for getting more community-based programs thinking about the ecology and the ecological ways of doing restoration. So with that in mind, Sushila Murmu, who's been leading the desk for the last couple of months, has been traveling large parts of India to see projects like this. And we're very happy that we can host this webinar today to hear of the experiences and the lessons learned so far. It's not been too long. It's only been about 6 months that we've launched this work. But we look forward to sharing what we've seen, and also hearing questions and insights from our listeners today. So with that short introduction, I hand over to you, Sushila. Walk us through the journey of the IPLC desk from the last 6 months. Yeah, over to you, Sushila.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the introduction. I will just share my screen. Yes. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this session on community-led restoration, perspectives from the ground. My name is Sushila Murmu, and I'm managing the Indigenous People and Local Communities Desk at Ecological Restoration Alliance, India with Keystone Foundation. And I'm here to share my experiences of building a network of restoration practitioners from Indigenous and local communities and their projects across India. And as well as I want to share my insights, whatever I have gained from the community conservation and restoration practices. I will also highlight the challenges and opportunities ahead for strengthening community collaboration across regions. And I'm very excited to share lessons and reflections from my journey across landscape from the last 6 months, where I have met these communities and the organizations supporting them. So let me first start with a question. Why do you think we felt the need to create something like an IPLC desk? So, when you picture a forest, most of us immediately think of wildlife, tigers, elephants, birds. But when we look closer, we see people, families living and around the forest and the rivers. For them, it's not a weekend escape or a holiday spot, it's their home. And we all know that they still forage a lot of fruits and vegetable, mushrooms, soil, medicinal plants, sometimes very essential to them for sustainability, and sometimes with a lot of pressures. But it has always been part of their ways of life. They have lived in their forest, just next to the forest. It's their lives, livelihoods, and cultures which are tied to the forest, which often the outsiders can't see. And really, who better to protect and nurture these landscapes than the very people who call them home? I'm also an Adivasi myself. Even though I grew up in a very urban setting, my life and culture are also still very much connected to the through rituals and traditions, even with like simple act of needing any leaves for some ritual or ceremonies is very much tied to the forest. That's why I see this desk is a very essential part of ERA. And it's also about giving space to those voices, strengthening the diversity of ERA network, and including these IPLCs across India and their way of knowing. So, when we talk about the approach I have taken for the IPLC desk, so when I started working on this particular desk, we figured out that we do not have a single India-wise database about who is doing what in this field and what, especially what IPLCs are doing. So I started with figuring out what's happening there by looking into a lot of existing work, tried reaching out to a lot of indigenous communities, organizations who are working on restoration, and I began with building relationships with them. And that relationship converted into preliminary visits to those sites, and which became a ultimate goal of creating a network of these IPLC groups. And that respectful that became a respectful conversation with a slow start of a database and the documentation of these community initiatives. And I did prepare a comprehensive questionnaire that included a lot of questions around what is the role of the community in restoration, history of degradation of that particular land, what is the land tenure, various stakeholders related to ecological restoration of that particular site, climate change aspects, what is affecting these communities, how it is affecting their lives around that, traditional ecological and knowledge systems around ecological restoration. And the main question what we were trying to find answer for was that what restoration truly means locally and their vision for it. And I was also trying to understand community priorities and challenges, and ultimately try to weave a network of these IPLC groups so that they can exchange this knowledge and take up ecological restoration in their respective regions. So now I would like to take you through all the places I have visited and give you an overview of what I saw because of this preliminary site visits. And I have done this in almost like 6 months, and I could visit various landscapes, which included like dry deciduous forest of West Bengal, which was in Purulia district, and working area of Keystone Foundation in Jharkhand. And then I got to visit mangrove forest and mangrove ecosystems of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. And also, I moved towards the northeast where I could visit three states, which included Sacred Groves of Meghalaya. And then I also visited community conserved areas, Nagaland. And I could also visit places in Arunachal, which involved hornbill protection and forest restoration work. So now I'll take you through all these sites. And let's start with Purulia, West Bengal. So this visit was part of the community-based ecological restoration initiative launched by Uttarayan Wildlife Wing of Kolkata. Dia Banerjee, founder and director, and Natin Chatterjee, project head, Restoration South Bengal, from the organization, facilitated this particular visit for me. So during this visit, we engaged with a lot of indigenous communities, mostly belonging to Santhal community, and the other local groups at three restoration sites. So these three sites were Fisrahat village near the Gajaburu forest range, and the other one was Ibirkola alias Misirdi, and the fragmented restoration plots of Chatuhansa. The restoration project here was launched in August 2024, and with the focus on restoration of private lands. And when I went there, when we were discussing about the challenges these communities was facing there in terms of the land there, so they talked about a lot around the historical land use changes. For example, one of the residents was talking about a lot of tree cutting for the railway tracks for Britishers. It was a very, in the past, they used to cut a lot of trees for the railway tracks in this particular region. And they also talked about, because of the deforestation, lot of water scarcity issues was happening, soil degradation was happening. But in spite of all of these challenges, this community held hand with Uttarayan Wildlife and started the restoration project here. And the picture you saw here, see here, is of the local person Chepalal Baske, who also helps Uttarayan Wildlife to mobilize a lot of indigenous communities here who can take part in restoration activities, and also supports the ongoing restoration work. But the picture in the left says a different story. So when I was visiting one of the restoration sites in Chatuhansa, I saw this lady named Sonamuni Mardi casually walking around the restoration sites with her boat. And we shared glance, and then I immediately went up to her and asked, "What do you think what we are doing here?" And then she said, "I don't know." But I was very persistent. I was like, I was talking to her in Santhali, and I was asking her, "What do you think? And can you tell a story? What do you think about the forest we used to have here?" And then, because I was not looking like a Santhali, but even though I was talking in Santhali, she started talking. She was starting telling a story that when she was young, there were no roads here. Everywhere she saw, there were only abundant forest and green forest around her. Sometimes it was scary, also, she said. And but she also mentioned the forest was full of resources, whatever they wanted for that particular period of time: firewood, mushrooms, even soil for wall paintings, fruits, everything was available in the forest. But she also mentioned when she got old, the forest also started diminishing, and what they used to find for their sustenance in that particular area is not there anymore. So this also tells a lot more about the present condition of lot more villages in across India. And when I dug deeper into the challenges they were facing with the restoration, there was unreliable rainfall, which was also affecting the agriculture, because the agriculture was also rain-fed agriculture, and the restoration activities as well. Because the site we are looking at right now in the bottom is one of the restoration sites there. But because of the untimely rainfall, the growth of the plant did not happen properly. There were other challenges like cattle grazing. Even though they had created a lot of trenches around the restoration site, the growth of that particular restoration area was not happening because of all these challenges. And one more interesting challenge I saw when I was there was preference for commercial species like acacia and eucalyptus, because these plants are fast growing and then can be used for selling it for as firewood. That gives them a alternative income source. So these are the challenges which I could see there in that period of time when I visited there. But when I also saw the challenges, but I also when I was discussing it with the team there, so I what I could understand and gather was that what Uttarayan Wildlife is trying to do there is to build a model of participatory planning that can work through the local governance, like Gram Panchayat is there, local youth groups which are very interested in football. So they have football youth groups there. There are women SHGs there. So all of them are, holding hands together to be able to bring a model of restoration, and they are signing benefit sharing MOUs with the private holders there, which also showcases a balance of biodiversity and livelihood. They're also trying to incorporate a percentage of 30-50 or 50-50 of horticulture species and native species there. But what I could gather from my reflection of this particular site was that water is also a very central uh, element for restoration. This particular village is facing a lot of issues in terms of living their life, water around their daily lives. And when we are trying to set up a restoration site and for agriculture, water is a very crucial element. So I also feel that to build up a nursery to take up the restoration activity, water plays a very important role. And I also felt, well, despite all of the challenges, these communities felt that this restoration can bring up the landscape they used to have in the past. And their shared belief is taking them forward with this particular restoration activity in this site. So now we move forward to the next site I visited. which is the mangrove sites from Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. So, according to the 2025 report, which I read recently, said that approximately 25%, 25 to 26% of the Odisha's total coastline is prone to erosion and very vulnerable to
I
climate
didn't get
change.
that. Could you try again?
And very much vulnerable to climate change impacts, which is also because of intensified storms and cyclones. And the picture you see on the left was taken when I visited the Siali village, which was also hit by the super cyclone in 1999. This image also shows that the few remaining casuarina trees are there along the coast. You also see a lot of damaged structures, including the watchtower, uh, because the shoreline is also receding towards the human settlement. And I also remember one of the local resident mentioned that during his childhood, the beach extended nearly. Uh, he mentioned that the beach was very much far away, like 50 meters from where we are standing right now. And he can also see when he's young right now, he's saying that the sea is also like advancing in a very alarming state. And the land nearby is also very much affected by the calamities, also the human intervention around the mangrove. Like the mangroves are used for the firewood and also for the house making there, which also led to a lot of coastal vulnerability or soil salinization. And but there's one interesting thing I also saw there, which was mentioned by Vijaya sir, who facilitated this whole field visit, mentioned about the harkanj, which is a associate mangrove species, which also shows that mangrove once thrived in this particular area. So this visit was facilitated by Action of Protection of Wildlife Animals, and we will be hearing a lot from Mr. Vijaya sir, because he's also the co-speaker of this particular webinar. But here we can also see that Vijaya sir and Rutika Nath, who's also working in Apua, they were showing me this particular river you can see here, which used to be a very small nala in the past. But you can also see that it has grown into a full blown river due to a lot of reasons, such as soil erosion and other activities near the coast. You can also see the plantation side, you can also see the nursery side in the picture, which is one of the site is managed by Kala Kanhu Swain, who's also the nursery manager. So you can also see the right bottom corner. This picture is of Kala Kanhu Swain's home. And very interesting thing about this particular house and this picture is, in 2025 they still don't have electricity in this area. But when you see this house and when you enter this house, uh, you don't feel that heat inside the house, which also shows a lot of availability of natural material and the utilization of it, even though the electricity is not there. And we can also see the traditional knowledge system is still in place. I also wanted to discuss a lot about the benefits of the interventions POA has done in this area. On the left top corner, you can also see a grass in the basket, which is made out of this grass, which is locally called nentai, and which is majorly found around the mangrove sites, which can be used to make these kind of baskets, which can be used for storage. And this grass is also used to make a lot of handicrafts, which can also be alternate livelihood options for a lot of local communities. But they're still looking for a market to be able to sell all these handicrafts made out of this grass. And you can also see the mangrove, like thriving mangrove on the bottom, and the tree trunk of that particular mangrove forest, which also feeds the fishes. So it's a balanced natural system for both humans and wildlife. So when went there, I also came to know about the youth group there, the participation of women there, the participation of youth, the school going children. So Apova is also trying to build a system where the young generation is also understands what's happening around in our around in terms of the climate. So they take up these drawing competitions, they take up this debate competition, they have these beach cleaning drives, so that the youth groups, the women, the young generation can also understand what's happening and also support the ongoing initiatives done by APOVA. So next we have one of the mangrove sites I visited in Andhra Pradesh, Machilipatnam district, which was supported by Praja Prakriti Seva Sangam. And the problems here were very much similar to the APOVA sites. The You can also see in the picture the ocean is also rapidly moving towards the human settlements, and there is no cover. The whatever you see here is a very recent plantation work done by BPSS and the regeneration. So, and you can also see on the left that they have appointed a fishbone plantation method, which utilizes the natural water systems, so that the plantation also thrives and grows faster, which was suggested by one of the local community, tribal community who's staying there. So whatever they are also trying to do here is also a collaborative, which is also the community is also participating actively. So Praja Prakriti Seva Sangam is also trying to build a system which is systematic, inclusive, and combining a lot more aspects of restoration, conservation, and livelihood support. And these local communities are taking part in plantation activities. Also, this is benefiting them in a lot of livelihood avenues like aquaculture. They are also taking up adaptive agriculture practices in this particular area. And the plantation is done on the government land here, and the local community is also managing the land and the protection of these plantation sites. And the benefits and the uh, best outcome of this intervention is that the coastal protection against the soil erosion become better, and then the availability of fish and prawns is also has increased because of the intervention of mangrove plantation. And because of this, the income has also diversified, and PPSS has also introduced salt tolerant paddy in this particular region, so that and the agriculture can also be practiced in this region. And next we go towards the northeast, and the first site I visited in one of the states of Meghalaya was Maflang Sacred Forest, which is supported by Sinjuk and led by Mr. Tambod Lingdo. So this particular project is under Red Plus project, which began in 2010, and which now extends over more than 27,000 hectares, encompassing 10 indigenous Khasi Himas. So basically, Hima, when they talk about Hima, so they are basically group of communities, and together they are managing this sacred forest and the carbon project there. And almost 86 villages are part of this project right now. And at the heart of all this effort, the Sinjuk Federation is playing a very crucial role of coordinating forest management. Fire prevention is also a very important work here, and also a lot more alternate livelihood streams which can be done in this region. So Sinjuk is also facilitating a lot more in this region. So the key interventions is assistant natural regeneration and fire management, and a lot more village councils, self-help groups, farmer clubs are responsible for developing a lot more natural management plans. And decision making is totally into the hands of community here, what I could also gather from the visit I did here. And they're also incorporating a lot more initiatives around ecotourism, wellness tourism, because in Meghalaya there are lots of wellness. You can see a lot of wellness person from tribal community who can take this up. Ecotourism, because Meghalaya is a very picturesque place. It's a very beautiful green lush forest. It has a lot of green lush forest. So they are also trying to venture into a lot more ecotourism initiatives, wellness tourism initiatives. A lot more local guys are being trained, and herbalists are also being guided so that they can get another source of income here. Um, so one a major initiative what is being done here in the this area is the carbon credit project, which has already reduced almost 3,64,000 tons between the year 2010 to 2021, and has become a pioneer model for how carbon can fund indigenous governance and conservation. And this is approved by Plan Vivo model, and now they are paying approximately um, the international agencies who are buying these carbon are almost paying $5 to $20, because this is also a very strong model of community. So they have also set up community centers, trout farms. They set up meetings so that community can take part in decision making. And this is one of the So, what you just saw was a glimpse of Khasi cultural celebration of a festival, which is done to actually appease the goddess for a prosperous harvest and to honor their ancestors. And I got a chance to actually see that when I was in Meghalaya, which was a very interesting festival and very much related to the forest and what they are doing with the management of the forest and the community leadership there. So next, I'll be talking about the community conserved areas of Nagaland. I managed to visit two locations in there, in the Nagaland, and one was in the Samenyu district, and which was facilitated by the Kenueno Foundation, and Nagaland's community conserved areas are among the country's most ambitious community-led conservation initiatives, but most of them are not reported. And one of the very interesting conversation I had when I was there was about how there is a lot more, like people are talking a lot more about restoration, but there's a lot more to be done on the conservation side of the land, because we have still have a lot more forest which needs to be protected. So which was a very interesting insight I could gather. And community conserve forest and areas have a very interesting approach of giving away their clan land and private land for community conserved areas. And the decision making is done with the council members of the community conserved areas, and elders and women or youth also participate to take decision for those areas which can be conserved in that particular region. And one of the interesting conversation I had with Swensubi King, which is the head gaon Buddha of that particular old village of Sendenu. He said that we are keeping aside a lot of our land, but what about the other opportunities we should also get out of this um, particular work? Because when they're giving away their land, they are not getting any alternate livelihood opportunities, and because they are also giving away their cultivation practices, so they also need to practice agriculture in their land, but that is also not happening. So what I could gather is that they are trying to do a lot around the conservation of their areas, but lot more initiatives to be taken to provide the alternate livelihoods for that particular area. So what Kirino Foundation is doing there right now is to create a ecotourism model, so that uh, people from outside can come there and can understand what they are doing in terms of community conserved areas. And also they are trying to build enterprise around coffee, or they are also trying to build up education modules around restoration and conservation. And they're also trying to create a model of plantation where they also introduce agroforestry species and also native species. And the next location I visited was Tekimong and Wonga village, from the Pungro region of Nagaland. The picture you see on the left shows one on the behind you see the lush green forest, and in the front you see, when I was driving through this particular village, I saw this very big patch of jhum cultivation area. Even though there are a lot of communities that have left jhum cultivation, but because there are no alternate income avenues for them, so they are still cutting down a lot of forest, and they are still uh, practicing jhum cultivation. So that was one of the conversation we had, that how NEDA, who is working in that particular area, is supporting them. So NEDA is supporting the local communities with planting native species, and also so that also recharges their water, because in this area which I visited was facing a lot of water scarcity, and the locals also understood the need for planting these native species, and also the other kind of plant that can help the water recharging of that area. And here there are lots of stakeholders like village council, women self-help groups, youth, who are contributing for the plantation and the development activities of this area. But still, there is a lot of challenges they are facing here in terms of the hunting is banned here, but because Nagaland, there is a lot more hunting happening, still happening, which is also hampering a lot of forest ecosystem there. But still, challenges are there. But NEDA and the local communities trying to build up the ecological stewardship, and trying to improve the livelihoods and infrastructure for water and irrigation, and the communities also trying to bring strong community together, so that they can uh, try to revive their own forest. And the last of the sites I visited there was Hornbill Protection and Forest Restoration Site by Pake, in Pake, by Nature Conservation Foundation. And here, the picture you see on the left has a very interesting story. And this person was also, I got a chance. When we went there for a meeting, he came here like this, wearing the traditional topi and the garland and the traditional weapon, we say. So the topi you see here he's wearing is called Byompa, and above that you can see a hornbill beak, which is called Fibung. And he's tying a weapon here which is called Chege, and the garland he's wearing is called, the mala he's wearing is called Taseng. So they were talking about the significance of this attire, and the most important thing which I saw, the hornbill beak here. So they were talking about uh, the past. In the past, they used to wear the original hornbill beak, but now they have uh, transition into like the wooden hornbill peak, so that if they can grow the hornbill population there. It's a very interesting conversation I had with the community. They are working with the NCF, is one of the largest, which is Nishi community, and NCF have been set up a nursery which almost has like 100 plant species, which is native to that particular area. And in the picture you see on the right shows that Pake Tiger Reserve and the reserve forest area, and this is where most of the restoration work takes place. And the key focus of this particular work was around hornbill conservation, and because hornbill needs a lot more the plants where they make their nest, which was also diminishing in number. So NCF is also trying to bring back hornbills there, and also trying to take up ecological restoration there. And the nursery they have set up there, it's also becoming a learning center, so that the field officers, the local schools, and other organizations who are taking up ecological restoration in that area can learn. And the NCF field coordinators who are from that niche community living there are taking up these educational programs, which is a very interesting thing. because these local communities can bring back their traditional knowledge, and whatever they are gaining, the knowledge they are gaining from NCF can be included, and then they can take up ecological restoration, which will thrive in that region. So these are the major sites I visited in the last 6 months. But now I would also wanted to talk a lot more about the challenges what I could see throughout the field visits I went for. So I also saw like a persistent threat, including the shifting cultivation, which we saw in the northeast, illegal logging and mining and quarrying, and extensive resource extraction for the forest, and also a lot of recurring forest fire, which is also uh, which is not uh, letting the forest grow naturally, and a lot more climate change issues. We can also we I also saw like unreliable rainfall, which is also hindering the growth of the forest. Lots of development activities, lot more sand mining, lot more forest timber cutting is happening. I also could gather there are communities also participating, but the youth, because a lot of migration is happening in these villages, youth is not participating that much because they don't understand this work. So this is also one thing I could gather, is one of the challenges. And also the spread of invasion and limited livelihood opportunities in this particular in all these regions, because there are few of the organization could introduce another alternate income sources, but few of them are still figuring out, the indigenous communities are also still figuring out what can be done. And also a lot more funding and money needs to be directed toward ecological restoration and conservation initiatives. And few of the reflections I had from these field visits were also when I visited various landscapes across Odisha, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh. I saw that community is central to all these initiatives, because they can only build the leadership and participation in their own communities. And one another thing is also important to bring back those indigenous knowledge systems with the scientific knowledge we have, so that the forest will grow, the conservation and restoration efforts can be taken up, and livelihoods, alternate livelihood models needs to be also uh, thought through, so that these villages, these communities also thrive. And building education capacities, capacity building of the communities, youth is also very much important. Is very much crucial for taking up ecological restoration initiative. Climate change is one of the aspect which is very much talked about these days. But when we talk about indigenous communities, they are the most affected by these climate change. So that is also need to be taken into consideration. And when we talk about the challenges again, so challenges are multifaceted. Why I'm saying it multifaceted? Because when we go there and we talk about ecological restoration, they are facing some other level of challenges, like water, like livelihood, migration. So when we go there, so we need to understand how every region can strategize their own work, and can proceed with the ecological restoration and another interventions there. And next steps for the particular desk, I would say, because we are trying to create a document and a database for all the IPLC groups across India. So because I could, in 6 months, I could only go to 6 places. So there's a lot more scope to be document, and also a lot more stories to be told. So I would need, the IPLC disk would need a lot more support to document and share these stories, also to make a depository for everyone to access. These are the most important steps for the IPLC desk right now. And also because we will, in future we will have the repository, we have the documented stuff. Then we need exchange and knowledge sharing among various IPLC groups, and also engagement with policy and government is also a very big chunk of work. So how we can talk, in terms of policy, how we can create a network of restoration practitioners so that IPLC groups can also be supported, and then the forest can also thrive. So these are the major steps for the IPLC desk that can be. And thank you for listening to me for this long, and I'm very grateful to all the organization who supported me till date for all the preliminary visits and shared their knowledge, share their stories with me, and I'm very grateful to them. Thank you, everyone. Yes. The co-speaker of this today's webinar is Mr. Vijay Kumar Ravi. He is also the director and founder of Action for Protection of Wild Animals in Odisha. And I would like to welcome Mr. Vijaya sir to share his work with us. I got a chance to visit him in Odisha, and what I saw he's doing, he's truly a community leader, and what he could achieve because of his vision is very inspirational. So I would like to welcome Mr. Vijaya sir to share his work.
Thank you so much, Susila. Really, we are so grateful to you and Key Foundation. Actually, you have given me opportunity to present my short story here. Actually, truly, I am staying in villages, so my knowledge and everything is very limited. So we got the opportunity, is a vast networking with you while working and know about your presentation around the nation. So truly, it is a very nice presentation you have. And so, Mandeep, can we go to our presentation, slide presentation?
Yes.
Uh,
Give me a
yes.
minute.
Actually, I am. My organization is Action for Protection of Wild Animals. It was founded in the year 1999, just before super cyclone, which was strike to the coastal Odisha, particularly Jagatsinghpur and Kendrapara. At that time, around 15,000 people were died, and millions of houses were dashed into the ground, and animals every destroyed. So I was also a victim of that time. So there is a village near Bay of Bengal. It is very close to Hongsina river mouth named Bodakot village. This is a truly success story we have made through community. So I am going to throw directly to this story what we have done actually through community. So everything is possible if we get together and we think together. So a successful community-led mangrove restoration model. So how it is protecting both lives and their livelihood. Next. So through our organization APUA, we are working particularly in coastal district of Odisha to conserve ecology and particularly mangroves, wildlife and their habitat, and to protect the lives and livelihood of the coastal people. So this is the scenario of a village where the people were resettled from the Kirokot to Bodakot. This is Bodakot, and before there was a village, the name is Kirokot. Now geography is nothing, but its record is there. Kirokot is only in paper. So because just before super cyclone, the erosions started 20 years back, and the entire villages were washed away, and the people again resettled the neighbor villages. And this is the picture of that neighbor villages. The erosion also started in these villages just after uh, cyclone, that is 1999. So we visited that villages in the year uh, 2002, and that was devastating. So people having all no happiness, and everything is thinking about the future. What can I do? So when our time will come, we will shift to another villages. So this is the scenario at that time. So we think and we collect and to talk with the people and sit together and collect the history and to get the knowledge from the seniors. That actually what happens the before erosion, there is a great land which is around their villages and full of mangroves. The people are caught and the erosion also happens. There are so many causes to deforestation. So after deforestation, the erosion started and the frequency happens. So after that, the villages was washed out. So when they are shifted to this particular village border code, the same also happened. So we have decided, and the entire patch which was the site to this villages border code, so the entire patch is around 25 acres stretch, and that was it is fully grazing and without any plants. So we decided if we plant mangroves, so entire villages will be served. So we talk with the seniors and we collect that the before that land was full of mangroves. So what species we have locally collected that name, and we collect the same seeds from the nearest Bhitarkanika jungle, and we decided to plant particularly in the day, and the people are gathered and started the plantation. First seed, then seedlings. So in this way, we have started the plantation. It is around 20 years. So it is a very mature and fully protected jungle. So next, please. So this is the location, the Bay of Bengal. Next, please. Next, please. Yes, this is the erosion happens, which is it was around 20 years back. The entire villages, these are the scenario which was regularly eroded by the tide and the high tsunami and the cyclone. It's the cause of this erosion. This is Wadakot village, Kendrapada, and located at the estuary of Panchua River and the Bay of Bengal. I was already told you. Yes. Next, please. Next. Yes. Yes. So the river erosion affected agricultural land and homes, frequent cyclone causing loss of life and property also. Villagers in Barkot had experienced erosion, and it created a large part of the population of the village was migrated here from the village of Kirokot, which was destroyed by the erosion in the state in 1990s. So due to its location, Barkot village experienced strong wind, heavy rainfall because it is the front of the river mouth. Also, flooding during cyclones, which caused significant damage to life and infrastructure and livelihood also. So the Kirokot, it was around 18 households completely washed away, and 71 households migrated or displaced from the old villages. So 50 acres of agricultural land lost, and 26 people were died due to cyclone in the 1971 and 1999, and more than hundreds of livestock lost due to cyclones. These are the pictures you see. So next, please. So today the village has around 25 acres of mangrove ecosystem for more than 20 species of 1 lakh trees thriving, and helps fight the impact of river erosion and cyclone. It stands like a buffer against cyclone. The community created forest hosts several seasonal migratory birds like open-billed stork as well as reptile, mammals, and other animals. It is a good habitat for that, for the wild animals. So now it is fully protected. So the entire villages are protecting to this particular village, and it is very experience in the summer that when the other parts one witness around 40 degrees, so there is only 28 to 30. So how it is cool you feel. So during summer, the local people are automatically comes to this jungle and sit and spend their time during the summer time. It is very interesting at that time. Even I also visited regular at that time. Even now. Next, please. Yes, this is the past. It is 2002. So when I visited to these villages and sit together in the river bank to see the decision maker like the community heads and the other senior people who are discussing and collecting the traditional knowledge how the mangroves were protected to their villages and listen from the people's the species of mangroves. So after that, we just started the renovation work of the natural channels, how to comes to the regular inundation. Okay. So site selection and baseline study we have did. So next, please. Yes. So setting clear and achievable goal, training and awareness program, that is very important when people understand their problems and the solutions. So the automatically they come forward to any types of work. This is very important to convince them the importance of ecology and the importance of their problem and what are the solution, the way of solutions. That is most important. Next, please. Yes, these are the first nursery we have raised during 2004. So the land is highly fertile. So it is only 3 to 4 months nursery to see. So how it is grown. So I think it is wait for us how to protect these villages. Next, please. Yes. You see the people first taking a step to restoring the natural water flow plantation site, which is essential for their survival of growth. Provide a control environment where seedling grow until strong enough to be transplanted and ensure higher survival rates. So direct planting, we have also conducted the two sides of that river channel. So direct planting is upon some high crocodiles due to its simplicity and cost effectiveness. So regular monitoring and care to ensure the health and sustainability of forest, which is includes removing invasive species like restoring a damaged area and control grazing of cattle. These are steps we have taken. You see my picture in the board, so I have a stand in front of it. This is 20 years back of my picture. Yes, next please. Yes, these are the nurseries. Yes. So involving local youth and village women, children, local CPOs and local forest department is very important for the success of this plantation, because we have not enough knowledge to implement any works. So we gathered the knowledge from the seniors of the villages and the forest department, and we are also making awareness among the children how mangroves can protect to our coast and to our villages and the livelihood and the lives of many coastal peoples. So how it protect uh, to from the natural disasters like cyclone, tsunami, and high tide also. So these are the participatory way we have plantation started at that time. Next, please. So now this is the really grown forest. You see the 20 years efforts. So 15 years ago, you had nightmares of our house collapsing, because I have already told that story. So despite faced 7 cyclones since then, mangroves were planted. Still, they stand strong and tall to protect the lives and properties of the Barkol village. No cyclone-related fatalities and property damage since then. So first is reduction in river erosion, that is the impact. Next is enhanced protection against cyclone, improved biodiversity and ecosystem service, improved safety and livelihood for the communities. So these are the impact we have counted from this plantation. Next, please. So these are the natural channel. So these are the community efforts we see. So how we take saplings through the country board to the plantation site. It was not an easy start, but gradually our efforts gathered momentum. Initially, we found it to bring all the villages together, uh, together to solve the problem of river erosion. But with consistent efforts, we are able to bring everyone under one platform. We overcome these challenges through trust, transparency, teamwork, and local community members. Yes, please. Next. So lessons learned. So community involvement is very important in every work. So engage local community in planning, implementation, and monitoring to ensure long-term success and sustainability. In Badkot plantation, I can say, truly, we don't invest in not a single pie for this plantation protection, because people rotation basis, they are giving protection to these villages. That is social fencing. So it is great for this inning works. So to convince them and to understand them the impact and the importance of the mangroves, so importance of the plants. So this is very important for the community, how they engage, how to be engaged with any works. So importance of local knowledge. So local knowledge is very important, because when we go to the new places or any of the area, so we have to integrate and we have to collect the local communities, any types of knowledge which we implement in particular that area. So upon possesses a traditional knowledge about the species, growth patterns, and environment conditions, integrated this knowledge with the scientific approach, ensure sustainable and effective restoration efforts. So species diversity. Use of mix of native mangrove species to enhance the ecosystem resilience and functionality. So one species we cannot put in that area because of, so the diversity is very important in mangroves. So the diversity helps to control the disease and their fatality and casualty. So they plays different roles in their particular area where they are planted. So hydrological restoration is very important in mangroves. So prioritizing restoring natural channels and natural water flow and drainage pattern to support mangrove. Monitoring and adaptive management. Establish regular monitoring to assess progress and adapt strategies as needed. Next, please. So these are the impact of this story, so that a village is saved and their lives and livelihoods now it is very secure. Since 1999, we have faced more than 6 cyclones, but not a single house is damaged, not a single people were dead. So these are the impact of this mangrove forest. How it serves as a, how it stands as a coast guard and to protect the like buffer from the tsunami and cyclone, which is very close to the Bay of Bengal. So these are the real story I am presenting before you. So by inspiring to this story, Honorable Prime Minister of India also mentioned in his famous Mann Ki Baat program, that is 75th episode. So can we see just 1 minute how Honorable Prime Minister says, please.
सके कम ज्यादा प्रयास हमें भी
Yes, yes.
जैसे एक साथी है विजय कुमार काबी जी। विजय जी उड़ीसा के केंद्रपाड़ा के रहने वाले हैं। केंद्रपाड़ा समुद्र के किनारे है, इसलिए इस जिले के कई गांव ऐसे हैं जिन पर समुद्र की ऊंची लहरों और साइक्लोन का खतरा रहता है। इससे कई बार बहुत नुकसान भी होता है। विजय जी ने महसूस किया कि अगर इस प्राकृतिक तबाही को कोई रोक सकता है तो वो प्रकृति ही रोक सकती है। फिर क्या था, विजय जी ने बड़ा कोट गांव से अपना मिशन शुरू किया। उन्होंने 12 साल, साथियों 12 साल मेहनत करके गांव के बाहर समुद्र की तरफ 25 एकड़ का मैंग्रोव जंगल खड़ा कर दिया। आज ये जंगल इस गांव की सुरक्षा कर रहा है। ऐसा ही काम ओडिशा के ही।
So thanks for your attention. So these are the story Thank you so much for your kind attention. So my experience particularly on mangroves that so any work when we are working, so to uh, be clear before the community, and when community understand any issues, any solution and their solution, so definitely you will, they will support you and the success definitely you get. Okay. Thank you so much. So thanks, Sushila, and your team also. Sushila also visited, and they also get first-hand feelings of the community, how they extend their cooperation, not only to me and to everyone, those who are coming to this area. Like now, that area is like a tourist spot. So many people are coming to this particular area. So we have also uh, uh, make a central nursery. So around 30 different mangrove species you can find there. So at a time. So on different species. So those who are nature lover and school children, college researcher, so coming regularly and they are getting knowledge, and the local people are very happy that some so the jungle is giving their protection and stand as a buffer and helping to these people, and the good environment, good wind, and everything is good for them. So thank you so much for your kind attention to all. Yeah, Priscilla, please.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for sharing your work. I have seen it. I really wanted for you to share your experiences, and I really wanted everyone to hear your story, because whatever you have done in that area, but I could see it's very very inspiring. And then we need more community leaders like you, so that we can take this initiative. And then you can also, other people who are trying to regenerate mangroves in their areas can also learn from your work. And thank you so much for sharing your work, sir. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Sushila and Vijayji, we have some questions in the question answer panel. We can take a few of them. Khushi is asking, how can land tenureship and utilization pattern by local communities guide eco restoration practices?
Yeah, I think Anita ma'am would be the best person to answer this question.
I saw that coming. Uh, yeah, I think this is also the big question when we are doing ecological restoration. Like, where is the land? What all kinds of land are there where we can take up this work? And how can we move from a simple tree planting exercise to a proper ecological restoration plan? And communities do have lands, as we've seen in the case of what Sushila shared from northeastern parts of India, several parts of India where communities have access to large tracts of land, where they do not necessarily have the capacity to manage those lands anymore. So these are great opportunities for conducting ecological restoration. But in that process, we really have to be clear about what will the communities get from taking this up. And I think that is something we still have to work out together. There are a lot of lands under the community forest rights. Now, that could be a whole new area of opportunity for all of us who are working. So if we can work in partnership with communities, where there are these kind of lands where we can jointly participate, this would be some of the ways going forward. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Anita. Thanks for that. And thanks, Khushi. We have one from Lingeshwaran, who first thanks you for the presentation. He says, thank you so much for sharing your insights. He is curious and interested to know what frameworks or indicators do you use to measure the success of community-led restoration beyond just tree survival? For example, biodiversity return, soil health, and hydrological benefits. Thank you. And I think he also has a follow-up question. Okay, but let's just take this one first and then we can move on to the next one.
Okay, so
Sushila, Vijay.
I wondered if, would Mr. Bijay would like to answer this, because what I heard truly about that social protection is really one of the most powerful things that I saw, that I heard. So what do you think, Mr. Bijay?
Yes, truly. Actually, the biodiversity return, what happens? Everything changes in scenario, particularly villages. So we have seen uh, the salinity in groundwater also change, and the nearby people are also getting, I think, not only groundwater, but also their livelihood also. Sometimes it is changes their lives, like they get enough grassland also. So, and mangrove is the breeding ground of fish. So many fish population is increasing in nearby area, particularly in the river bank. So it definitely helps not only to stabilize the erosion, and not only protect to the from the villages from the natural disasters like cyclone and cyclone, but it is a great part for their livelihoods. So the you see the population of bees and the grassland for their cattle, and the environment is very clean. So since then, the peoples they are getting the lungs disease is very few in that particular area. What we have seen since last 10, 20 years. So these are multi benefit they are getting. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vijayji, for that. I think Lingeshwaran's follow-up is, I think, addressed to Sushila. And he asks, in your experience across different sites, how can traditional ecological knowledge of IPLC communities be systemically combined with modern scientific restoration tools to ensure both cultural relevance and ecological effectiveness?
Wow. So, uh, from my understanding, whatever have learned about ecological restoration and how communities can be a part of it, when we take up any restoration activity in a particular land area, and I'm also looking at it from an architect perspective, because that is that is also, so when you look into a building, you start working on a building, you see a lot more around apart from the building. Right? You talk about the site, you talk about the wind, you talk about the water, what's happening around. And I think it's very much similar to a restoration site, and the people related to it. When you talk about house, because I am an by study I'm an architect, so I'm thinking it from that perspective. So people are going to use it, and restoration site is also around people. It's supporting the humans, and humans are also utilizing its resources. So I think when you start taking up an ecological restoration work, the traditional knowledge start with gathering a lot of that and incorporating. For example, one of the sites I just showed, where we talked about the fishbone plantation method. It came from one of the uh, local tribal community member, and it is, in a way, I felt from my very minimal understanding, worked for that region, because the water was flowing, the growth was good. So I think from a very small understanding of this, I think that's how, if you understand your area, site surrounding, I think the and the if people also take part in the decision making, they share their knowledge, and then because there is going to be an organization who has scientific knowledge, so I think that's how you can incorporate both of it.
Thank you, Sushila. That's a beautiful analogy and a very interesting one. Thank you for that. Mm, We can move on to the next one. Umar is asking if mangroves only grow in saline water or whether they can also grow in fresh water. Vijayji, I think this one would be for you.
Actually, all trees needs fresh water. So mangrove increase in brackish water normally, and it has the power of resistance, like to sustain in saline water. So fresh water is very necessary. So mangrove generate in brackish condition. Yes.
Thank you, Vijayji and Umar, for that. We can move on to the next one. Preeti is asking, Sushila, this one is for you. So based on your experience, what financial and management sustainability have you observed in the field?
So most of the projects I visited was driven by the local organizations. So I think they, in terms of finance, it was backed by organization connections with funding organization, or maybe most of them were also funded by government. And management, in terms of management, and also one of the examples we saw in Meghalaya, they had a carbon credit program which was also funding a lot of their ongoing development work in that area. So in terms of finance, there are multiple avenues, and in terms of management sustainability, I think one very important thing is what I could see all the sides, that if community is believes in your work, because ecological restoration and this work what we are doing is a very long term process. It takes a lot of time. So their belief and their, if their understanding is built, if their capacity is built around that, if they understand the term ecological restoration and they believe in the process, I think it will sustain, and the communities will also grow. I think I answered the question. I think, or yeah. And Preeti's other question was also about alternate livelihood. What I meant by alternate livelihood was, because these communities mostly, uh, in most of the cases, they were giving away their land for just planting the tree, be it native, be it horticultural species, and they'll not be able to use that land. And few of the cases, these communities only had that land and they just gave it for conservation or restoration. So that means that they need another piece of land or another source of income, so that they can survive in general in life. So for example, in Vijaya sir's case, we are doing a lot of plantation work, but there's also aquaculture which is boosting in that area. Similarly for Machilipatnam, and similar for Mauflang, tourism is boosting. So these are the alternative income, whatever they are doing with that particular forest, but you are keeping it for conservation and restoration. But how you can get another avenues or of income, uh, depends on case to case, depends on site to site.
Thanks a lot, Sushila, for that. And one thing I wanted to suggest was that if any of the participants, if they want to continue this discussion with you, if there's a way for them to have this conversation with you offline, we can also put that out later. We have one more question, and I know that Dia had something to add, and I think she wanted to thank you as well. So we'll take that question, and we have a question from Dia. We'll come to that. So we have one from Sahiban, and they're asking, can we grow a mangrove sapling by plant tissue culture? I think, Vijayji, another one for you, mangrove related.
Yes, tissue culture. So we have not started yet on such types of strategies. Actually, we are eco restoration of mangroves. We are believe at that and doing so. So we have no idea actually.
Thank you, Vijayji. Saiban, on that note, we have someone else in the community who's, I am not sure if tissue culture is the same as vegetative propagation, but there's someone else also in Odisha who's experimenting with vegetative propagation. If you're interested, we'd be happy to put you in touch with them.
Okay, okay.
And Dia, would you? I know that you wanted to thank Sushila and you had something to add. Would you like to come online and just share what you had to say?
Hi, Shushila.
Hello, Dia.
Hi, sorry we couldn't meet when you visited our site, and thanks for covering our work because we have been doing it very silently and not really beating our work around much. And as you could see, other than Otin and me, the whole team is actually formed of locals. We don't have a very top heavy, very educated kind of a team at all. So that has been my typical strategy, that the team and the knowledge will be only local, and we would only be standing and supporting them in whatever ways they think is right. So I hope you got that feeling of it. The only data which I wanted to edit for you was, we started this project back in 2021. So we are in the 4th year of it. It's a 5-year long. And as you rightly said, we are now going towards trying to give them some income in the form of carbon credits. So that will be our next step, in fact.
Thank you so much, Dia, for actually letting me go there and to cover this. It was a very great experience for me. And I remember we were also following birds and foxes in the night. If we could see. Yeah, but thank you so much, Dia.
Always welcome. And I guess, Shushila, you went back to your roots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So that must have been very exciting for you.
Yeah, it was
Talking in
actually.
Santali and,
Yeah.
speaking in Santali and all.
Yes, it
Thank you
was.
so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Dia. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye. Take care.
Okay, I think with that
And Mandeep also.
yeah, you're welcome, Dia. I think with that we are at the end of the. We are done with the last question, and thank you everyone for staying, and thank you Sushila and Vijayji most of all for laying out and painting this amazing picture of on-ground restoration from the lens of community challenges and priorities. It's actually quite amazing to see such amazing work happening in so many different places. And Vijayji, of course, it's an honor to actually hear your story from your own words. Some of us have read the story in different places. So thank you for coming and thank you for the time that you've given us. Yeah, with that, I think, Anita, do you have anything to share? Okay. In that case, we'll call it a webinar and see you for the next one.
Thank you, Mandeep. Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much, Vijaya sir.
Thank you, Cecilia and Nita. Yeah, Mandeep also continuing. Keep connect with us, and thank you so much. Yeah.
Yes.